Hello, Seattle. Oops. I meant Portland. Woo, Portland, right? So not that this joke requires any further elaboration. I hear jokes are best when you have to explain them. So in a way, I guess we don't, because Aaron's already done the whole Portland-Seattle thing. But apparently there's a rivalry between these two cities. Did y'all know that? I didn't. But clearly, I thoroughly researched this. I'm definitely Team Portland, though, and that's not because we're physically here and I'm scared any Portlanders out there will egg me. Anyway, welcome back from lunch, everyone. We're really excited to have you all join us for a fun-filled half hour of learning, laughing, and maybe a little bit of groaning if none of our jokes land. But if you do make it through this whole talk, we have a fun little surprise for you at the end. So if you're ready, give us a verbal bat signal of sorts. We're looking for whoop whoops or a caw-caw. Nice, we're getting lots of whoop whoops and caw-caws, so let's get started. Well, hello everyone. My name is Betty, and I'm feeling super lucky to grace the stage with the effortlessly smart and wonderfully kind human, Ashley Ellis Pierce. Whoop whoop, and the crowd goes wild. Woo, ah. I'm our hype person here right now, gassing ourselves up. I honestly think the world of Ashley, by the way. I think Ashley is fire. Or as some kids say, Ashley is lit. Quite literally too, though. Like, she just lit herself on fire the other day. So I'm not even joking. That's her favorite shirt. I know.
Yeah, very embarrassing.
Anyway, I'm so excited to do this talk with her because I feel like we channel the energy of a badass dynamic duo. I'd compare us to the likes of Batman and Robin or like Anna and Elsa. But then I started digging a bit deeper, and with some reflection, I actually realized we might be more like Pinky and the Brain, because like Ashley brings the smarts, obviously, and I bring a lot of other things to this relationship too, okay? So it's not a knock on myself by any means. I also quickly want to share that I'm a first-time conference speaker, and thank you. And speaking at RailsConf is definitely a career bucket list item for me, so it's an honor to be here. But I'm not gonna lie, my palms are a bit sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, there's vomit on my sweater already, mom's spaghetti, she's nervous. On the surface, she looks calm and ready to drop. Whoa. I think Eminem just took over my body just now. I think what he was trying to help me articulate is that I may or may not be a little bit nervous, but I'm working on channeling all that energy into some pure, unadulterated excitement. So bear with me if I'm a bit of a loose cannon today, like right now. Hi, Mom. And also, hello, Sandy Metz. The YouTube algorithm's probably going to get her to watch our talk at some point, right?
Yeah,
maybe?
If you say her name enough.
Yeah, if I say her name enough? Okay. I'm really taking us off base right now, and Ashley's going to rein me in soon. But before we do that, we want to build some positive energy in this room. So can everyone just face their neighbors and give them a socially distanced but enthusiastic high five?
Nice.
Nice. Okay, and can you send some high fives up here to Ashley and I as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
I like to call these Wi-Fives, by the way, because it's like a high five over the Wi-Fi. Huh?
We're in person.
Yeah. Okay. Now that this is all out of my system, let's get to the good stuff. Ashley, what are people here for?
Great question, Betty. So as you all know, the title of our talk is Gem Install, What Could Go Wrong? And spoiler, the answer is a lot. We put a lot of faith in gems, and we want to make sure that they're safe. Betty and I work together at Shopify on the Ruby Conventions team. Our team works to make sure that Shopify's many hundreds of Ruby apps are all in tip-top shape. So if, for example, there's a Ruby CVE, we would make sure none of the over 600 Ruby apps are running the vulnerable version. And so in that work, we started to consider, how do we make sure that none of these apps download an unsafe gem? And that led us into the all-encompassing, multifaceted world of supply chain security. So that's what we're here to talk about today. When you install a gem, what could go wrong? I mean, that gem looks so cute and friendly, right?
Totally.
Like, how could that little gem be harmful? But it turns out a lot could go wrong. The security of the gems that we use is incredibly important. Because when we run gem install, we're just putting unquestioned faith in whatever we're installing. And the security of our gems is getting even more important every year. According to Sonatype's 2021 State of the Software Supply Chain Report, in 2021, there was a 650% increase in software supply chain attacks aimed at exploiting weaknesses in upstream open source ecosystems. In 2020, there was a 430% increase over 2019. So every year this is accelerating, and there are more and more people trying to make sure that when you run gem install, something indeed goes wrong. There were a couple of notable supply chain attacks from last year that you might have heard of. One was the CodeCov attack. CodeCov runs a code coverage report on your CI environment and then uploads that report to CodeCov servers. But between January and April 2021, its Docker image was modified. So for CodeCov's 23,000 customers, that uploader also sent their environment variables to the hacker's remote server. Another supply chain attack from 2021 was the dependency confusion attack. Unlike the CodeCov attack, this wasn't taking advantage of one company in the supply chain and going after all of their customers. This was taking advantage of a more general vulnerability in how companies structure the way they get packages. Basically taking advantage of when you say gem install XYZ, how do we know where to go to get that gem from? Is it from Ruby gems or from some other gem hosting server? We're going to talk about this in more detail later, but suffice it to say, dependency confusion is bad and we want to avoid this. These are just two small examples of attacks in 2021. So we know for sure this is happening. Why aren't all developers up in arms doing something about this? Well, one reason may be that we want to leave it to the experts, right? In the past, security is not one of the areas that I have personally felt most empowered to just go out and fix. It's really hard to know where to even start looking. Web developers often rely on security-focused teams to be the keepers of this knowledge.
But the thing is, we too can be keepers for some of this knowledge, because the most common attacks are actually quite straightforward to execute. And that's why they're common, because they're relatively easy to pull off. So yes, that means that most often there aren't any super hacksaws tactics required. And as much as NCIS would love us to believe that the way to defend ourselves against attacks is to have two people fiercely keyboarding away on the same keyboard, no less, that is sadly not the case. Otherwise, Ashley and I would single-handedly, dare I say double-handedly, defend against all attacks at Shopify. Attackers are simply preying on the fact that developers are imperfect human beings. And so they've set up booby traps to catch us when we least expect it. For instance, a common exploit is where attackers take advantage of common spelling mistakes, or they take advantage of a gem being hosted on a different source repository. And the most classic tactic in the hacker handbook, they take advantage of the fact that some of us are lazy humans. And as lazy humans, many of us are guilty of reusing our passwords, right? I'm sure people can relate here. But the good news is, over the next 20-odd minutes, we'll unpack some types of attacks, how they happen, and most importantly, you'll walk away with strategies to defend against them. Our goal is that you no longer need to solely rely on security-focused teams, and that you can be the first line of defense.
So, as Betty said, before we get into how to mitigate attacks, it's probably good to understand what kinds of things can happen when malicious code gets into our gems. I mean, really, what's the worst that can happen? What can attackers actually do if they have compromised our gems? Well, developers are secretive people. We live a double life, part of it working in the open, sharing our code with others, and the rest of the time, we deal in secrets. That's why our servers are so big. They're full of secrets, right? All right, I'll leave the jokes to Betty. You may have things like your AWS deploy tokens, RubyGems access tokens, and all other kinds of secrets stored somewhere on your local machine or in your servers. The same machine and servers that you're installing these random gems on. That's a lot of trust to put into gems. It's like inviting random people into your home and just hoping that none of them are thieves. A bad actor could put code into the gem to steal these secrets and then send them back to the attacker. And this isn't just hypothetical. When the Rust client gem was compromised in 2019, this is one of the things it did. This is actual code from the hack. It checked to see if we were on any environment but localhost. If so, we take all the environment variables, add them all to a hash, And then it does a post with that info back to the hacker's own website, that Miranaru endpoint there. And as you can see, this is pretty simple code. The hacker is not some genius, like Betty said, furiously keyboarding away, seeing who can type faster, the good guy or the bad guy. So what else can an attacker do? In addition to stealing secrets from you, another type of attack is ransomware, where instead of taking something from you, like your secret credentials, they're actually hiding your own data from you. They will encrypt your data so that now you can't access it, or maybe they'll lock you out of your system entirely. You can only gain access back to your files or system once a ransom amount is paid. There was an attack called Ryuk a few years ago, which was a widely publicized ransomware attack between 2018 and 2020. The FBI has estimated that it's caused $60 million in damages worldwide. If an attack like that happens just like 700 times, suddenly that's enough money to acquire Twitter.
Too soon? Too soon?
So ransomware is pretty detrimental. Similar to ransomware, where the goal is to get money out of you, lots of crypto-based hacks exist as well. Maybe they want to install a Bitcoin miner on your machine and use your server resources instead of paying for their own. Or maybe they want to straight up steal any crypto that you might have. One such example was in 2020, 2 Ruby gems called Pretty Color and Ruby Bitcoin. Ruby Bitcoin was pretty obvious, the name kind of gives it away. But Pretty Color was an exact replica of the colorized gem, which lets you add some color to your console. So it actually did something. And if you were looking for a gem to do this, you could have very easily downloaded the Pretty Color one without realizing that it was malicious. With these attacks, they took over your clipboard so that if you ever copied a cryptocurrency wallet address to your clipboard, it would replace it with the hacker's wallet address. So you ask someone to send you money and you try to send them your wallet address, and instead you're sending the hacker's wallet address. So this is pretty niche and a very small potatoes attack, but it happens. What else can happen if you download a bad gem? Another type of attack is when an attacker adds a backdoor. This is kind of a broad, arbitrary term, but it generally means when a malicious script is installed to give the hacker a persistent gateway into your system. This is from a hack of the strong password gem in 2019, and it was also in the REST client gem hack that we talked about. It's an attack method that's pretty common. They've added a bunch of cruft to try to make it look confusing here and like throw anyone off who might be looking at the code, but really they've just added code to check to see if the Rails environment is production. And if so, they eval open whatever is on a paste bin. And so this is a backdoor because they could use it to steal secrets like they did with REST client, but they can also use it to do whatever they want. They can keep changing the code on the paste bin and whatever is there will run. So this is an open door to do whatever they want to do. This is another example from an attack on the Bootstrap Sash gem in 2019. A specific cookie sent by the client is base64 decoded and then evaluated in runtime to effectively allow remote code execution. Very similar to the paste bin, they can put anything they want into the cookie and it will run on your servers. So this is another example of a backdoor. As I mentioned, backdoors are a pretty broad category because they can steal credentials or install ransomware, but they can also do pretty much anything else they want, like install a crypto miner. The sky's the limit.
So now that we've explored what's the worst that can happen, let's unpack how malicious code actually gets into our systems. One way is through installing the wrong gem. Now, before I want to get into that, I want to do a quick survey. How many of you have ever made a typo? I see some hands still aren't up yet, and so I'm assuming you've just abstained from typing to keep your typing record pristine or something? Huh? I'm kidding. So for our friends watching this at home at RailsConf Home Edition and to Sandy Metz, basically the whole room more or less had their hands up, which I guess isn't shocking, but this does bring us to one of the weaknesses that attackers try to exploit. They're simply counting on our propensity to mistype something. So instead of typing gem install robocop, you type gem install robocop or gem install robocoop. I'm hoping you get the point here. Sneaky attackers squat on gem names that are just a typo or two away from legit gem names. Their goal is for you to erroneously install their malicious code in your applications and have it run on your local machine or production systems. And at that point, they could be crypto mining, like Ashley had mentioned, or it could be even worse. It's just bad news bears all around. Now, this type of attack is called typo squatting. And there's also a variation, or what I like to call a cousin of typo squatting, called combo squatting. And an example of that would be if you want to include a gem called cool beans, but you didn't remember it properly and instead installed a fake gem that a bad actor had been squatting on called beans cool. And at that point, it'll definitely be not so cool beans. Am I right? What's interesting about this class of attacks, though, is that it's the most common attack on software supply chains. I'm going to let that sink in. The most common attack on software supply chains is basically an exploit on our inability to type properly or remember a sequence of words properly. Pretty wild, right? Another way a wrong gem gets installed is when the source repository is not explicitly stated. So it's not clear where the dependency should be downloaded from. For instance, let's say we have an application with a bunch of gem dependencies. Some are hosted privately on our private server, some are hosted publicly on Ruby gems. Now honing in on one of our private gems, let's say we have one called Soho House, because y'all know how private and exclusive Soho House is, right? So an attacker learns of this private dependency of ours, and with a quick search, they learn that there's no public version of this gem. So they proceed to create a public version of Soho House. And of course, their version is going to have all the naughty code in it. But the crucial part is, what happens when we run bundle install? Well, bundler needs to decide where to download Soho House from. Will it be from our private server or public server, which is Ruby gems? And the thing is, it depends. Bundler will decide which gem to download based off of the gem version. Whichever gem is the latest version, it's going to download from that source repository. And this is the attack that Ashley was alluding to earlier, called the dependency confusion attack. Very aptly named, if you ask me. Which gem should be installed? I don't know. Many choices, much confusion. And on the note of confusion, sometimes account ownership can be confusing too. Specifically, the confusion is who actually owns this account. I highlight this as a problem because the second most common attack on software supply chains is account takeovers. This affects us because it's possible for people who are the maintainers of our dependencies to have their account stolen. The attacks that Ashley mentioned earlier about the gems REST client, strong password, and bootstrap SaaS, those attacks all happen through account takeovers. And once an account has been compromised, an attacker can perform all sorts of privileged actions, like yanking a gem or pushing a new release of a gem with malicious code injected. It's like you thought Aaron Patterson cut a new version of Rails, but then it turned out to be dun, 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 Aaron Patterson. Did you like that one? I was really proud when I came up with that. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, another Patterson way that malicious code can get installed is if Ruby gems itself gets pwned. Now, this is way less common than the previous attacks I mentioned, but it's the most dangerous for all our Rails applications. If Ruby gems is compromised, attackers could just change the files on package repository servers without maintainers even knowing. And this type of attack is called repository compromise. The attackers basically have the ultimate keys to the kingdom. In fact, within the last few weeks, Ruby gems just addressed a critical vulnerability where any Ruby gems user could actually yank and then replace certain gems that fit a particular criteria. Fortunately, WhiteSource completed an analysis last week and concluded that no gems were compromised. And so while this attack is uncommon, it is still a risk that exists when we install and use gems. And so now that we're all sufficiently paranoid, I want to be clear here. This is not a PSA for y'all to stop using gems. Right, Ashley?
Of course not. Sure, this all seems pretty scary, but gems are incredibly useful. They're convenient, they help us iterate faster, we don't need to constantly reinvent the wheel. Besides, Rails is a gem, and we're not here at RailsConf advocating for you to stop using Rails. So by all means, stand on the shoulders of giants. It accelerates your development and it accelerates innovation. But as we've discussed here today, there are some very scary things that can happen if we don't secure our gems. There are some inherent risks to using gems. The goal is for us to understand the risks and be diligent about mitigating them. I mean, driving can be risky, right? We could all be approaching it like a game of Grand Theft Auto, but we're not. We wear our seatbelt, We follow traffic laws. We take safety precautions to make our journey as safe as possible. We need to do the same when taking an approach to supply chain security. To ensure our applications aren't compromised, we need to secure our gems.
That we do, Ashley. And so how do we actually go about doing that, though? Now, let's talk about countermeasures. For starters, when I say counter, you say measure. Counter.
Measure.
Counter.
Measure.
Oh my God, that worked. I didn't think it would. Y'all are great. So the first countermeasure we get into is typo squatting and combo squatting. You're probably all thinking, what can save me from my erroneous typos? Like a Grammarly for gems? And my answer is yes, kind of. In the sense that Grammarly consists of a defined list of words and grammar rules, you and your team can define a list of vetted gems. And that list can essentially become your allow list. Okay, great, so you've got an allow list, but how do you actually enforce it? One option is to create a GitHub action that verifies whether the gems added in your gem file are allowed or not. If you're curious about how to get started with this, we built a scrappy prototype to help you get the ball rolling. But to be clear, it is far from feature complete, but we hope it can serve as inspiration. In addition to the allow list, we'd also recommend practicing the campsite rule. You know, the one that says, leave things better than how you found it? So if you've come across a suspicious package, just report it.
How about dependency confusion? How do we counteract that? Last year, Bundler released a fix for how it prioritizes sources. This was originally fixed in version 2.2.10, but we recommend being on at least 2.2.22 for all the best goodness related to this issue. If you look at the bottom of your gemfile.lock, you'll see a bundled with version. If it's not at least 2.2.22, update your bundler and gem install again. With this fix, you can now specify a block source in your gem file. That'll enable Bundler to prioritize resolving the gems and its transitive dependencies to the specific source listed within that block. And even if you don't explicitly list the sources, once you upgrade and then run bundle install, your gemfile.lock will change from this old format where the possible remotes are just listed at the top, and each time you run bundle install, any gem can resolve to any remote depending on who has the highest version, to this new format where the remotes are listed one by one, so that for each gem, it knows exactly where to pull that gem and its dependencies from. And it's consistent on every bundle install. So you never have to worry about Bundler being dependency confused and just changing its mind about where to pull the gem from because someone out there in the world created a higher version. As long as it was pulled from the right place initially, it'll continue pulling from that place on every bundle install. So again, check the bundler version that was used to generate your gemfile.lock. If it's lower than 2.2.22, you should update to get this protection. This was a problem we had to solve at scale at Shopify since obviously we had a lot of apps to update. One of our teammates actually wrote a blog post for how this problem was tackled. If you're interested, you can check it out on the Shopify engineering blog. Now, let's talk about how to counteract repository compromise. As Betty mentioned before, someone hacking into RubyGems itself and changing the gems directly there is not a super common scenario, but it is very destructive. So luckily, there are some things that can be done to mitigate that risk. Gem signing is one mitigation technique. Maintainers cryptographically sign their gems, and then when you install, you can use the high security or medium security flags to verify the signature to ensure the gem has not been changed. This has been built into RubyGems for quite some time now, but unfortunately, it's pretty cumbersome to use, and so effectively no one uses it. There's an RFC open on RubyGems right now, written by some other members of our team, to make signing easy and seamless. So if you're interested, please check that out, and feel free to share your opinion.
And last but not least, let's talk about account takeovers. The way I see it, there's two parts to this problem. Firstly, how can you assess your risk exposure to account takeovers related to your application's dependencies? And secondly, how can you contribute to account integrity on improving account integrity on RubyGems and the software supply chain in general? So first off, when talking about account takeovers, it behooves me to begin with these 4 words. Enable multi-factor authentication. It's such an easy thing to do, and it's incredibly effective. How effective? Well, Microsoft had released a report a few years ago noting that MFA blocked 99.9% of automated account takeover attacks. Like, that level of protection is more effective than the awesome N95 masks we're all wearing right now. We might not have N99, but we've got MFA 99, right? And who wouldn't want a piece of that? So let's get back to our two key questions. We'll start with gem maintainers. Is there a way for us to determine whether their accounts, or any accounts for that matter, have MFA enabled? If we head over to rubygems.org and check out our dear friend Aaron's profile, can any of you spot his MFA status and where it's noted? Got some shaking heads? Yeah, me neither. And as you can see, or not see, there's no indication on his profile about his MFA status. And that's by design. While you and I might have the best of intentions, publishing an account's MFA publicly is like letting a thief know which home is easier to break into. I'm just gonna pause here for a moment because it took me a long time to draw these doodles for like 2 seconds worth of speaking. So they're little piggies in a wolf. Anyway, to that point, it was we don't want to advertise which home or account is easier to break into, and that's why MFA isn't on a profile page. That said, gems can be configured to require all of its maintainers to enable MFA before performing privileged actions. So if you're a gem owner and you want to know how to set that up, you can check out the docs here. And for everyone else, if you want to verify whether this configuration is actually set up so that MFA is being enforced, at least on a gem level, you can find that out by navigating to a gem's show page. For example, here, you'll notice that Rails requires its maintainers to have MFA enabled. In addition to this, the team Ashley and I work on are very much invested in the health of the Ruby Gems ecosystem. Recently, we've submitted an RFC and had it accepted by the Ruby Gems team to roll out an MFA enforcement policy for the top 100 most downloaded gems. And this policy is in line with what other package managers are doing. NPM, for instance, has already rolled out a similar policy. And in fact, GitHub has just recently announced that their own policy to require users to enable MFA by the end of 2023. Needless to say, we're excited that in the near future, maintainers of some of the most popular gems will be protected from the Aaron Battersons of the world, right? Don't want any more of those. And next, how can you personally help improve account integrity on Ruby Gems? Well, if you have a Ruby Gems account, enable MFA. Because in the famous words of my bestie, Beyonce, if you like it, then you better put a ring on it. If you like your account and you want to keep it, you better put a figurative ring on it, right? If it's not obvious already, we are big on MFA. Like, we are riding the MFA train all the way home. Choo-choo! So we'd extend the ask of enabling MFA to beyond just your Ruby Gems account. To put it simply, just MFA all the things. NPM, GitHub, Shopify if you're a merchant. If the service offers MFA, enable it. And for those of you who end up enabling MFA on your Ruby Gems and or GitHub account, Ashley and I want to give you this ridiculously adorable limited edition sticker to celebrate our collective love of MFA. And so, yeah, stickers! Woo! Stickers! And so in closing, if you loved our talk or amateur doodles, tweet at us, and I don't know, CC Sandy Metz if you want to, maybe. I'm kidding. We honestly would love to hear from you though. Like, tell us if you've learned something new or how much impact we've had, because you know we can also shamelessly collect receipts for our next impact review. Okay, jokes over. Seriously, thank you so much. MFA, all the things. Come find us for stickers and a final Wi-Fi to you all. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
We did it. Done.